More than 500,000 people have signed a petition demanding a Washington state senator go to work with a nurse just for a 12-hour shift. But it comes after she said this. See what you think.
I understand helping with employees and making sure that we have rest breaks and things like that. But I also understand that we need to care for patients first and foremost. And by putting these types of mandates on a critical access hospital that literally serves a handful of individuals, I would submit to you those nurses probably do get breaks. They probably play cards for a considerable amount of the day. But the reality is this bill does not apply to critical access hospitals. Please support this amendment.
Oh, dear, dear, dear. So that was Senator Maureen Walsh during a debate about a bill that would create mandatory uninterrupted meals and breaks for nurses. The Washington State Nurses Association called her remarks demeaning. Now, Walsh defended herself, saying that she has the greatest respect for nurses, that her mom was a registered nurse for many years. Well, the bill is now headed to the House for final approval. Then it goes to the governor for his signature.
Senator Maureen Walsh said she was trying to show her opposition to a bill that would guarantee uninterrupted rest breaks and lunches for nurses. Walsh's office has received 27,000 calls and the same amount of emails. People are angry.
Just not the nicest language. I've been called some pretty horrible things, and my kids have been, gee, I hope you never need a nurse and hope you die, and, just threatening things like that.
But also many with a sense of humor.
Do I regret saying the cards? You bet I do. And by the way, I've got many, many hundreds of decks of cards that have been kindly sent to my office.
Tells you nurses are serious. They also have a good sense of humor.
Even though Walsh apologizes for the cards statement, she still believes breaks and lunches should be up to the hospitals, not state government.
What's your name, sir?
A gunshot.
Turning to the left on 1, 2, 3.
A stabbing.
52-year-old got stabbed in the back.
Get breathing out there. Yeah. Take the mask off. Sit him up and get an upright chest.
A person in a car crash.
Sir, can you wiggle your toes for us?
Trauma surgeon Dr. Thomas Cardilano calls this a typical day at work.
For someone who doesn't do this for a living and doesn't understand what we do sometimes, what we see, the facts are way stranger than the fiction.
Well, what's up, everybody? So before we get into this video, I wanted to read something to you and also just make a note that this bill applies for Washington, though when things like this start to happen and they get into effect and get signed in, maybe they can roll it out to other states that don't have it. And for my Florida friends, for my Florida people, let me read you this because it's kind of interesting. Florida labor laws require employers to grant a meal period of 30 minutes to employees under the age of 18 who work more than 4 hours. Florida does not have any laws requiring an employer to provide a meal period or breaks to employees 18 years of age or older. Thus, the federal rule applies. Now, it says here that the federal rule does not require an employer to provide either a meal, lunch period, or breaks. However, if the employer chooses to do so, breaks usually of the type lasting less than 20 minutes must be paid. That's why they give you the 30-40 minute break, because it doesn't have to be paid. You know what I'm saying? I thought like, oh, you get 30 minutes, or you get 40 minutes, or you can take an hour. Oh, that's nice. Well, it's because if it's under that, they have to pay for it. Meal and lunch periods, usually 30 minutes or more, do not need to be paid, so long as the employee is free to do so as they wish during their meal or lunch period. Let's get on with the video. Bang, bang, what's up, iCkEdMeL? I've been wanting to cover this story for a while, and I'm pretty late to the show, but I wanted to cover this because I have a lot of nurse friends. I have nurses in my family. My daughter's mother's a nurse. I've worked in hospitals for a long time, and I heard about this, and I was like, holy crap, this is interesting, right? But there's a couple of levels to this, okay? I think the bill is amazing. It's amazing. There was a couple of crappy clips that I put together in the beginning of this because I wanted you to get the full context. First of all, what she said about the playing cards can be so offensive to some of these nurses. What this senator, Republican by the way, what she's trying to fight for, she's saying that these critical access hospitals, which is a federal program established in 1997 as part of the Balanced Budget Act, the program aims to offer small hospitals in rural areas to serve residents that would otherwise be a long distance from emergency care. So it's supposed to help out people in long distance areas, remote areas that it's hard to get hospital care or health care. So she's saying that these places, that they're so small, I read that typically maybe not more than 25 beds. It's like a small little kind of hospital thing. She's saying that they basically have nothing to do with the nurses, so why should they mandate a mandatory 8-hour break, which I think they still should have their mandatory break. And the fact is, a lot of these nurses now, and I know a lot of nurses, and from my own personal experience, that in the hospital, you don't get a break a lot of the times. And by the way, before I get into what the bill is going to do, because this was actually passed in the Senate and in the House, the Senate voted 32-16. The House voted 70-24 to approve the bill with those labor-opposed amendments removed. What's kind of interesting, too, is that people would actually oppose this, right? Like mandatory breaks for nurses, right? Like, why would you oppose these people working long shifts, 12-hour shifts, that they're underpaid, underappreciated? They get treated like crap in the hospitals, right? And they barely get raises. The benefits in all these hospitals now are getting worse and worse. Why would you not want to push for the mandatory breaks, right? Because these are people that are working long shifts. They're tired, taking care of multiple patients. Your life is on the line, basically. Why would these people oppose that? I almost wonder, is there some sort of funding going on behind some of these people? Are some of these people paid to vote this way, to vote against these mandatory breaks for financial reasons for these companies, some of these hospitals? Sarah Rice, an intensive care unit nurse at St. John Medical, said in her 10 years on the job, she hasn't worked a full week that she's gotten to take all her allotted breaks. Starting January 1st, and this is what the bill is going to do. The House Bill 1155 will require hospitals to provide uninterrupted meal and rest breaks, not just your lunch break, but actually rest breaks for licensed practical nurses and registered nurses, with the exemptions for emergencies, which that's fair. It also bans mandatory overtime and includes new regulations on overtime and pre-scheduled on-call time. That's amazing. Who wouldn't want that? Beginning July 2020, the measure would also apply to surgical techs, diagnostic radiology technologists, cardiovascular invasive specialists, respiratory care practitioners, and certified nursing assistants. I hope one day to do pharmacy technicians, because we're so highly underrated too, overworked, underpaid, underappreciated. And by the way, when I say pharmacy techs, I'm not talking about my current job, because my current job is pretty amazing. But I'm talking about the hospitals, a lot of places I worked, a lot of places that my friends are still at, retail. That's what I'm talking about, where they're highly underrated, unappreciated. You don't get your break. And the thing is too, is that they're bringing up, I'm not sure for nurses, but for technicians, are really affected by this, because a lot of other jobs, they're bringing up the minimum wage for like McDonald's and all sort of stuff. Now, I don't have a problem with that if they're going to bring up the minimum wage to help people out. But people in the medical field, like nurses, pharmacy techs, we should be getting higher raises. If you're going to increase the minimum wage and keep closing in the gap, you know what I'm saying? I have experience. I've done chemo, I've done IVs, I've done all kinds of stuff in the hospital where literally, if I make a mistake, I could kill somebody. Literally, I've made things, realized I made it wrong, but the pharmacist checked it and it still was going to go out and I had to stop it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could literally kill somebody. And these people are sitting here talking about they shouldn't implement these mandatory breaks. You know what I'm saying? And in my personal experience too, one of the previous hospitals I used to work, there was times, weeks, I wouldn't get a break. And the thing that happens that maybe some people don't tell you about is that they take your break automatically. They take it out of your paycheck. So sometimes what I would do is, if you don't clock out, no lunch, the hospital is getting free money, right? That's another thing. That's why some of these people probably don't want to go for it. Hospital getting free money. You don't get your break. They take out your lunchtime anyway. You get paid less. So when you clock out no lunch, they actually get upset about that. You get in trouble. I've gotten a couple of emails on a previous place, and I was like, listen, if you guys don't have somebody here to replace me, I'm clocking out, no lunch, no break. So let's talk about finance a little bit. And this is brought to you by spokesman.com. And this is maybe why there's some resistance. They state here that the legislation could lead to an increase in public hospital district costs equal to $42.9 million each year to staff all the affected hospitals, according to the analysis by the State Hospital Association. So this is definitely a money thing too. These nurses deserve the breaks. They work super hard. I'm sure there's some downtime sometimes, like especially like overnight. Sometimes there's probably downtime, but overnight really wears and tears on your body. The kind of funny thing about this too is the senator that she claims to love nurses and that her mother's a nurse and she loves nurses. Why would you be against having mandatory breaks? You know, maybe, I don't know, how do you guys feel with the exemption of rural hospitals? Should these nurses get breaks? Can't they just cover each other? Or maybe there's just not enough people to cover each other? I think they should get break. I thought that was mandatory everywhere, but the truth is, the honest truth is, most of the time it doesn't happen. And a lot of people, they don't take their breaks and they don't let their bosses know, but their bosses know exactly what's going on. And when you think about it, this is really a loophole for the hospitals, if you think about it. Okay, they're taken back. They give you a 1-2% raise. Oh, thank you. Think about 30 minutes, thousands of employees every day that get taken. Let's say they actually don't take a lunch and they're taking 30 minutes all the time, every day, from people from their lunch breaks, taking it out of your check. That adds up to a lot of money. Maybe that adds up to that 42.9 million they're talking about, if you think about it. Let me give you another thing here. On average, 400,000 patients die each year in the U.S. from avoidable medical errors. According to the study in the Journal of Patient Safety, medical errors are now the third leading cause of death in the U.S. after cancer and heart disease. Avoidable medical errors cause an estimated $19.5 billion annually in the U.S., including medical expenses, mortality, and loss of productivity. So I don't know, man. You guys comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. You know, I can see what this senator was trying to say, but she came off very insensitive to the nurses because they're already underappreciated. That's why they got so offended. I think it's funny that they sent her thousands of cards or hundreds of cards to her office. I think this is a great bill that's being passed. It can be debatable with this critical access hospital thing. What do you guys think? That these hospitals with 25 beds or under, should there be an amendment to exclude that? I think all nurses should get their breaks, but you can, I guess, make an argument for this critical access hospital thing where they would maybe have to get some more people, and then you have more people doing what if you have all these extra people. I can kind of understand that. So it's an interesting argument, but nonetheless, I'll put the petition down below. They're signing a petition to have this senator follow a nurse for a 12-hour shift. The interesting thing with that, though, is if they have her follow a nurse for 12 hours, right? And let's say they bring her to an ICU or ER, a really busy area, that could probably make her appreciate nursing more. But the thing is, too, is if you follow what this senator was saying, she was arguing about the critical access hospital. So what would happen if you took her to a 25-bed hospital for a 12-hour shift? That would be kind of interesting because it might actually play into what she was saying, into her own argument of these critical access hospitals. And regardless of the senator stuff or whatever, I'm glad that the nurses are getting the much-deserved break bill mandate coming in January 2020. So comment below, let me know your thoughts. Have a great day. Peace.
I see potential subscribers. Subscribe for more. This is the mother info war.